Hey guys, Mr. T here. Let's go ahead and we're going to be talking about a pretty interesting time in American history. You're going to see a lot of similarities here to stuff going on now too, okay? Um, so one of the questions I have for you guys, I'll tell you right off the bat, is I want you to think about what similarities you see between the presidents and the politicians we're going to be talking about now and the politicians of today, okay? All right. So we're going to be talking about the age of Jackson. So here we have a look at our timeline. Okay. And just for some perspective here, um, we're going to talk about it's not until 1959, okay, so within recent history, that America finally had 51 states, okay, or 50 states. Sorry, 50 states, and 50 stars on our flag. Okay, before that, we did not. There were still territories. Okay, Hawaii and Alaska were the last two to be added to the American flag. Before that, it was the 48 states. Okay. And back here, Oregon becomes a state. Around here, we get a few more states. A lot of states are adding as America is slowly growing. Okay. And it won't be until the Spanish American War that we actually gain um, even more territory as well. Okay. So let's continue on. Uh, Andrew Jackson. He is a very contentious figure. There's a lot to admire about the man, and there's a lot to hate about the man. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about both. Okay, expanding democracy. So this is pretty interesting. In the beginning, Jackson gets the most popular votes. He even gets the most electoral votes. Okay. But the thing is he doesn't have enough electoral votes to actually win the election. Okay. There's a requirement, a cutoff on how many you need to have. And as such, the presidency goes to the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives is the one that actually chooses who's going to be the next president in this case. And they actually don't choose Andrew Jackson. Okay. They go ahead and they choose Adams to be the president, which a lot of people were upset about. Okay. Andrew Jackson is seen as the man of the earth. Okay. A common man. John Quincy Adams is absolutely seen as a Washington politician, a rich guy. He is part of the aristocracy. He's always had money. Um, Andrew Jackson is the first president and one of the very, very, very few presidents we've ever had who did not come from a wealthy family. Okay, who has not had money growing up. Um, he did have money after he was grown up. He ended up becoming quite wealthy, but he did not in the beginning. We see a lot of slogans and different things like that, speeches and parades. Campaigning to become president is becoming bigger and bigger thing. Voting rights. Okay, we're talking about more people being able to have the vote to be able to participate. Not only before it was white landowning males. That's the only people that can vote. Now more and more states are allowing people who don't own land. You still got to be white. You still got to be a dude, but you don't have to own land. Okay, so that's changing things up. Okay. Um, Now, at this point, the interesting thing too is both Adams and Jackson are technically from the same party. Both of them are called Democratic Republicans. Okay. This is when the Democrats and the Republicans begin to split into two separate branches. Now, do not think that the Democrats of the 1828 are in any way like the Democrats today or the Republicans for that matter. Okay. Because at this point, the Democrats in 1828 are the ones who are pushing for small government and states' rights and and it's the Republicans who are pushing for um, lots of infrastructure and working to make sure everyone has enough and social programs. Okay, the Republicans are the ones who are looking for that at this point. Okay, that's pretty different from where we're at now. Um, okay, moving on. Uh, Jackson is also he is there's a lot of name calling that happens, and Jackson is a very gruff man. He is very insulting to a lot of people. He does not speak like a politician. Okay, there's a lot of similarities in that, in how he was a businessman. He was not a classic politician when he ran for office. He had never held office before. There's a lot of similarities between him and, say, Donald Trump, who came in and was trying to or claimed that they were going to um, get rid of the politicians and be an everyday kind of man. Now the difference is Donald Trump, came from a very wealthy family. He was never poor. He had crazy amounts of money when he was born, and was given crazy amounts of money from his dad, and continues to have money. Um, Andrew Jackson is an actual self-made man. He was poor when he was born, and managed to come up from being poor to being quite wealthy. He served in the war. He didn't evade it. He is um, worked hard for a lot of his things. Now Andrew Jackson also is. We have all sorts of evidence that he was super duper racist, though. He really, really did not care for people who were not white. He sort of comes around on Native Americans to some extent. He ends up having, I believe, a Native American son that he adopts, but even then, it's a lot of iffy stuff about this guy. He's also the only president to have duels on the White House lawn. He kills a guy on the White House lawn in a duel. Um, pretty interesting kind of guy. Really gruff, get it done sort of attitude, and some of the things he gets done are not going to be good things. They're good things to some people, or it's the difference between a great thing and a good thing. So especially when we talk about what happens with the Native Americans. Okay. Um, So first off, he is the one to really change politics to what's called the spoil system. That means when you become president, you get to put your supporters in office, and so they ideally are the ones who are helping you get your vision passed. All of your campaign promises. What it oftentimes looks like is the people who gave you money, the people who were helped you got elected, get cushy government jobs now. Okay, so it's kind of corrupt, but it's something that every party does nowadays. Okay, and has since then. Um, he is something the book doesn't mention. Andrew Jackson, partly because of, actually, to a huge extent, because of the let's see, where does it talk about it? Because of the reforms, the taxes that his that John Quincy Adams put into place. When it comes time for Jackson to be in power, there's actually a surplus of money. They actually pay off every single debt, and the government has no debt. Andrew Jackson was a really, really big proponent of getting rid of the country's debt. And so he does. He gets rid of all of the debt that the country has had up till then. And the government was debt free. Um, that's going to actually sort of backfire on him to some extent. Having debt allows the government and the national bank to do a number of things. Um, what is also going to happen is he gets rid of the national bank. He thought it was bad. He got rid of our debt. Okay, thought that was bad, which there's still controversy on that. And almost as soon as he does those things, we get into a huge financial crisis. It does not lead to a perfect world that he thought it was. Um, a huge issue where there's a run on banks, and a number of banks close, and there's a huge depression that happens right after he does this, and so the government has to borrow more money, get back into debt, and finally level things out. Okay, um, we have this big debate over, can states push back against federal laws. Okay, this is something we're still talking about. Okay, the doctrine of nullification. Okay, um, Andrew Jackson also really, really works hard to take over Native American land. This is also one of the reasons why he is able to pay off all of the nation's debt, is because he takes over native land and then he sells that land to settlers to be able to pay off the debt. Um, it is heartbreaking what the government does during this time frame to Native Americans. It is, for lack of a better term, it's a Holocaust. It's racial cleansing. They either had to assimilate or die or get pushed off their land into tiny plots of land where they could not grow enough food. They were starving. Um, they were charged money for the smallest things. Um, all of their attempts and treaties that they made with the government were broken. Um, go, Rules and treaties that Jackson himself made, he himself at the bargaining table made with the Native Americans, he broke, um, constantly pushing the Native Americans out, which caused Black Hawk to have his war, which didn't go well, unfortunately. This Seminole Indians, they did great. They were able to push back in the Everglades and the Florida area. They were able to have a very successful fight until the federal government said, "Hey, let's have a peace treaty." He goes to the peace treaty to try and talk to them, and they kidnap him and they attack him. It wasn't. They didn't attempt to actually have a treaty. They just wanted to get him in a place where they could grab him. Okay, they take him prisoner, and he dies in captivity between malnutrition and being beaten. Okay, America did that. All of America's history is not always good. Unfortunately, we've done some really terrible things in our past. Okay. And it's up to you guys as the future. It's up to us to try and make sure that we live up to the American dream, that we actually try and work hard to become the good guys. Okay. And actually take care of each other. Um, Black Hawk War is interesting stuff. The Trail of Tears. Andrew Jackson goes against the Supreme Court. He essentially gives the Supreme Court the finger as he forces these people off of their land and into small reservations, okay, pushing them to move hundreds of miles without providing them enough food or transportation. Okay, they have to walk the whole way. It's devastating. So many Native Americans died during this time. Okay, it is really sad and really scary, and it's genocide. Um, so many Native Americans and so many tribes were wiped out. Um, Moving on, economic crisis. All of the stuff that Andrew Jackson thought he was doing to help the economy didn't quite work. Going to gold and silver actually causes all kinds of other issues. Going to a small independent banks, um, well, really, they weren't small independent banks. They were just independent banks. They were quite large, actually. Um, but instead of having a national bank whose goal is to regulate things, going to small bank or independent banks where their goal is to make money, it hurt the United States. It caused a big issue. Okay. Um, and there were a lot of problems, including a lot of people who lost all of their money because of this panic. Okay. Um, Here it's a graph that shows the land sales of how um, Andrew Jackson paid off all of the debt, okay, that he had in the beginning. Um, let's see, we didn't get to, or we did get to the Whig system. Yeah, this last day. Um, Here, the Whig system, the Whig Party, is a new political party that doesn't survive very long, but they try very hard to change things, called the American system. again to do infrastructure, to build roads and canals and railroads. Um, it's really interesting to see what would have happened. William Henry Harrison, he gives the longest dang speech, but he does it without a coat in a cold day, and the guy gets pneumonia. He gets sick and dies almost immediately, 32 days after being president. First president to die in office. And ironically, he was a doctor. Okay. Or he tried to become a doctor. He was in medical school, and he dies of pneumonia because dang guy couldn't be bothered to put on a coat. He didn't want to. He didn't want to appear to be old and frail, so he doesn't put on a coat. And then immediately dies because he was frail and old. John Tyler takes over, and John Tyler, unfortunately, was not a very strong president. But very interesting sort of stuff. But you see a lot of people trying to appeal to this idea of being a common man. Okay, um, which you'll see all the way up to today. Bush Jr. In the 90s and early 2000s. His accent of being kind of a common Texan. That's something he developed in order to be a politician because he wanted to sound more like a run-of-the-mill average Joe. Okay. All right. Well, that's what I got for you guys today. A lot of interesting stuff. A lot of hard truths though about America and about the American system. So, um, have a good one, guys. Bye.